Hi everyone, Vibe the Check Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Danny Brown album. You know what I'm saying? Michigan rapper Danny Brown, who has been one of the grimiest to ever do it. And he's back with a new album. What can be said about Danny Brown other than that he is the definition of ahead of the curve? Raised in a hip-hop landscape he was just too unorthodox for, as his career didn't really begin to take off until he hit the age of 30 with his breakout mixtape of the same title in 2011. But when Danny did eventually start to turn heads, his unique qualities became a draw. His druggy, raunchy, excessive lyrics, his party anthems that were simultaneously a dark cry for help, and all of it delivered in this wild, yelpy inflection that really sounded like nothing else at the time, though in retrospect it's really easy to draw stylistic comparisons to pioneers like the Wu-Tang's ODB, as well as Cypress Hill's Be Real. Now, while this is not something I discuss too often in reviews, but another draw to Danny was definitely his look. The side shave, his colorful clothing, and of course, his missing front tooth. It's worth it to bring up though, because since then, since the earlier leg of this decade, it seems like Danny has cleaned up and matured quite a bit, even going as far as to fill that legendary gap. It's like he's transitioned from being the biggest party animal on the planet to everybody's cool uncle. And I've been wondering what this could mean for future releases from Danny, essentially giving up that reckless look and lifestyle that fueled his most popular material, especially after his last record, 2016's Atrocity Exhibition, took such a dark turn. It's a record I named my album of the year that year. Danny's performances and lyrics and instrumental choices on this one are so extreme, I doubt he'll ever top this record. Not that I need him to. Ultimately, all I want Danny to do is evolve. So where do you go after such a dark and challenging statement? Well, with You Know What I'm Saying, it sounds like Danny is pretty much simplifying things, streamlining, reeling things in on a lot of fronts. For one, this is his shortest project in a long time. You would have to go back to some of his earliest mixtapes to hear something shorter. 11 songs, 34 minutes. There also doesn't seem to be a concept or a major theme pulling all of these tracks together either. And Danny still has unique taste for beats, but there's nothing on here that's as wild or bombastic as like a Blunt After Blunt or Ain't It Funny. In fact, multiple tracks and instrumentals here feel like a bit of a stylistic throwback. It feels like a slightly subversive update on a lot of classic rap formulas. As a matter of fact, none other than A Tribe Called Quest's Q-Tip executive produced this thing, and it shows in its old school ear. So given these potpourri and somewhat scattered characteristics of this record, the enjoyability of it really boils down to whether or not each one of these tracks is great individually, or if it somehow gets tiresome before the record is over. I can tell you that last one is not really an issue. I am actually left wanting more by the time this thing is finished. And most of the tracks Danny delivers here are actually pretty good. There are some underwhelming spots though, like the intro, Change Up, which in my opinion is a slightly boring tone setter. It's almost like Danny is not trying to build up expectations too much for this thing. We have an atmospheric instrumental, not a whole lot of groove, a clunkier version of a very familiar flow, understated delivery, at least for Danny anyway. I like the sentiment of the song, this idea of Danny not looking back, going forward, being unwilling to change in a way that would cheapen his art or himself. It's just a somewhat bland kickoff. We also have the title track here, whose instrumental sounds more fitting for that of a young alternative R&B singer just swimming in a lot of space and atmosphere. The messaging gets a little tedious too, with Danny relaying a piece of advice or a life observation and following that up with, know what I'm saying? It's certainly not the worst thing I've ever heard Danny put out, but it's so one note. The biggest breath of fresh air on the track is actually the featured artist, or Bong Jayar, who brings these deep, smoky vocals to this track, really pops out. I love his voice on Belly of the Beast too. I have complaints about that track too though. Danny's writing on this track is some of the funniest and wittiest on the entire record. I'm anemic with the ink, you a Stevie Wonder blink, I take a piss in the same sink you wash dishes with, you're illiterate, you're Bisquick soft, I put the biscuit, then you dip like cocktail sauce, I eat so many shrimp I got iodine poison, hose on my dick cause I look like Roy Orbison. That is certainly some classic Danny Brown if I've ever heard some. But I just do not get this barely there whooshing instrumental that doesn't really support Danny or his guest on the track. It just feels like just a very weak foundation. Thankfully, the rest of what's here is pretty high grade. The track 3 Tears featuring Run the Jewels also has production from JPEG Mafia. Totally bangs, even if the RTJ feature is pretty standard for them at this point. I love the track theme song, on which there is a mystical and strange instrumental. Danny delivers these brutally frank bars. He's kind of flexing his vet status on this track. I never thought I would see the day where Danny transitions from a partying weirdo who's widely misunderstood to having enough clout to look down on younger rappers as if they're uniquely lost or clueless, but here we are. Even going as far as to say you need to learn some respect, and I've done more for the game than you. It doesn't leave the best taste in my mouth, but I guess Danny has earned the right. At this point, he could have easily lost it all like many other rappers who popped off around the same time he did, but instead he's still going relatively strong after well over a decade in the industry and holding on to his artistic integrity the whole time. I wasn't crazy about Dirty Laundry when I first heard it. It has these weird, squeaky synths laced into the instrumental, and Danny's flow read to me more like spoken word at some points, with how, I guess, mid-paced it is and how much space there is in between many bars. But it's grown on me with more listens, mostly because the instrumental is so odd, and I'm loving the concept lyrically that Danny has pulled through on this track, talking about dirty secrets and experiences from his past, working in all these references to laundry, dirtiness, soap, cleaning, with the whole narrative tying back up at a laundromat on the finish. Easily one of Danny's most well-formulated tracks so far. We also have the killer savage Nomad, which goes harder than any other cut here, with those droning bass hits, those sparkling guitar lead samples, that fat, classic lo-fi hip-hop beat. The quotables on this track are on fire, whether Danny's saying something simple like same shit, different porta potty, or it's quite simple, I'm mental, all over instrumental, detrimental to hit, lyrics is quintessential. It's a good mix of flash and brutality. On the song Best Life, we hear kind of a hopeful, forward-looking Danny, which is rare. It's like he's embracing his new life path over a rich, soulful instrumental that is very feel-good, kind of blissful. I love the tight string samples on this track, how well they complement Danny's lyrics about moving forward, progressing, getting away from your dark past and the things that used to stress you out. Also got to compliment the tight and busy NEGRO spiritual, which features some great production and playing from Flying Lotus and Thundercat. The drum beats are intricate, they are shifting. Thundercat's bass is just wild, angular, all over the place. It provides a very strange and tense foundation for Danny's almost manic rapping. We also have JPEG Mafia on the hook here. Sad he didn't have a full verse to add to this track, but his very expressive, raspy tone on this cut, which is almost wheezy, I guess I'll say wheezy, was kind of a surprise. The man has so many inflections and deliveries. He's easily one of the most dynamic artists out there, and he killed the hook. I also love Danny's writing style and delivery on this track. It's almost like I'm listening to a more insane version of hybrid era Danny. It's like he's finally channeling the dark energies that surround him, that his music embodies a lot of the time, and focusing them in a creative way. Danny is also complemented by Blood Orange on the following track, Shine, which emotionally is a mix of hope and tragedy. Danny is reveling in the success and the shine that he has built up, but he's also feeling paranoid and vulnerable, like his career can be ripped away from him at any moment by I don't know what, but still, even as he's moving forward and doing better, these dark thoughts still paint the back of his mind. Now, if this album were more thematic or conceptual, I would love a closer that kind of ties things up and tells us exactly what this record is about, but we don't really get that. Instead, we get the track Combat, which is still a great track. You know, it's one of the punchier songs here, one of the slicker songs here, so it doesn't make for a bad finish. It features production from Q-Tip, vocals from Q-Tip, also Consequences on here, of all people. That's awesome that he came through. And the song is great. I mean, instrumentally, it feels like a classic Tribe anthem with these fluttery horn samples and great, somewhat chunky lo-fi rhythms. Vocally, Danny tones it down a little bit, not as aggressive, not as in your face, not as nasal, lower register. And in this gear, over this instrumental, Danny actually sounds like the rap veteran that he truly is. Skilled, expressive, lyrical, clever, dealing in themes of trauma, violence, and survival. Not too much more for me to say about the album broadly. I mean, it's just a really great collection of tracks. A few duds here and there, but that's it. The vibe is definitely more casual than that of Danny's other core projects, but it also speaks to his talent and his artistry for him to drop a project of this caliber without having to overthink it. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this one. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Danny Brown, you know what I'm saying? Forever.